pleasure to speak to Dr. Adityanjee today. Sir, welcome. And today, sir is going to speak on the latest developments as far as Taiwan China relationships are concerned. We are going to address the supposed Hong Kong guys. I don't know how to say that. Hong
Honkongization.
Kong Honkongization of Taiwan. Sir, welcome. And I'll request you to first give a little bit of background of this, again, another hate triangle story that we have.
Thank you very much indeed, Captain Nikita Sahay, for inviting me yet again on NetSec analysis. It's a very interesting topic, Hongkongization of Taiwan. As everyone knows that in 1998, Imperial Britain, which had the possession of Chinese colony of Hong Kong, reverted its control back to China, Communist China. At that time, an agreement was signed between It was a tripartite agreement between UK, China, and Hong Kong that Hong Kong will come under the sovereignty of China, but it will be one country, two system. And the two system, meaning thereby that the so-called democratic system in Hong Kong will be allowed to continue for another 50 years. And on that condition, Britain allowed China to go back, allowed Hong Kong to go back to China. Now, as we see, things are not the same. In 2020, China brought the national security law in Hong Kong, which banned civil unrest, civil demonstrations, secession, treasonous activities, pretty much all the democratic activity. And then in 2024, that law was revised, making it more strict. So essentially, it is one country, one system in Hong Kong. The two system talk is gone. Most of the democracy activists have fled. The chief executive of Hong Kong is appointed by China directly. There's no semblance of democracy. Now, the same carrot is being dangled to Taiwan for a long period of time, as we know that after the defeat of nationalist KMT government in mainland China to Communist Party or PLA in 1949, they fled to the island of Taiwan. Island of Taiwan was administered by Japan from 1895 to the end of Second World War, when it was given control back to China, basically the victor of the Second World War. And that happened to be KMT government, nationalist government. But when they lost, they came to Taiwan, and under the dictatorship of Chiang Kai-shek, a parallel government compared to the mainland was established there. That continued in 1998 when the then president of Taiwan democratized the island and started holding elections. And what happened that initial 8 years after the democratic elections were won by KMT. Subsequently, an opposition party, a Democratic Progressive Party, came to power. Chen Shui-bian became the president for 8 years. Under the democratic system, each president is allowed two terms of 4 years. So what we have seen is alternating between KMT versus DPP, Democratic Progressive Party. In order to manage the cross-strait relationship, some of the KMT officials had gone to mainland China in 1992 and had some discussion. Now, there's no written document of this discussion. Communist China refers to this as 1992 consensus, which most of the people in Taiwan don't agree, except for the KMT officials. There was a particular phrase that there is one China with different interpretations. That term different interpretations has been eliminated by Communist China, and their idea of 1992 consensus that there's only one China and Taiwan is a province of China. Taiwanese take different viewpoints, especially DPP politicians, and that creates the conflict. So, very recently, the opposition leader in China, which is the president of the KMT party, Kuomintang party, Chen Li-wen, she went for a 6-day visit to China, calling it Journey of Peace. And she met with basically Xi Jinping, and she basically talked about, 23 million people of Taiwan don't want to be slaughtered. We don't want bloodbath. And, we are not agreeable to the DPP stance about independence of Taiwan. So it is creating some ripples there. Important thing is that the current president is DPP, but the Taiwanese parliament, which is called Yuan, is controlled by KMT. So there is, an opposition party which has
Conflict
the,
of interest.
yes, which is holding the majority in the parliament, and the executive presidency is with the DPP, uh, Lai Ching-te. Lai Ching-te is a physician by profession. He won the election in 2024, and the next election will be due in 2028. So what Chen Li Wen is doing is angling for the next election that I am a
That's
person
what
of
I was
peace.
thinking, sir.
Pardon?
That how it is going to affect the next elections in Taiwan and this visit of KMT. What will how are the local people of Taiwan taking this visit? Because we are very well aware of the very long war, chip war going on, and between Taiwan and China, and Taiwan sticking to the fact that it has its own identity, and China saying that no, Taiwan is part of us and everything. So how will the people view this visit?
So, bottom line is that it always divides on party lines. KMT people will support that. And the same thing happened in 2023. Before the 2024 elections, at that time, presidency for 8 years was controlled by DPP. The president was Tsai Ing-wen. And the former president, Ma Ying-jeou, in 2023, before the elections, went to mainland again, made similar kind of peace, noises of peace, talking about the 1992 consensus, which is somewhat at variance with the DPP's interpretation. DPP says that there is one China and that Taiwan is a separate entity, although they are not proclaiming the independence, but they say it is Republic of China, Taiwan, not People's Republic of China. Uh, Most of the citizens of Taiwan actually are not mainlanders. The mainlanders who fled the mainland in 1949 after the defeat of KMT are few and far between. It is the indigenous population of Taiwan, which is very diverse. So there's a lot of apprehension about China taking over. That apprehension is always there. And around the time of elections, or prior to the elections, China actually starts putting pressure by blockades, by violating the airspace and all that sort of thing. Right now, in during this visit, Xi Jinping threw a carrot that energy sufficiency of Taiwan would be guaranteed by the mainland if they accept, quote unquote, one country, two systems. And of course, any word of a Chinese leader is basically worth of a toilet paper
So
because
while yes, sir.
China never
Yes,
keeps its commitments.
that's what China is. Xi Jinping is reassuring the people that the autonomy of Taiwan will be taken care of. But people, they are. It's very natural for them to have their own concerns. But if we look at at the flip side of the coin, suppose if this happens, they get together politically, what would be the benefits to Taiwan? We are generally talking about that this is not possible. Taiwan doesn't want it. The ruling party TPP doesn't want it. The people are worried about their own autonomy. But how could it benefit it, this association?
I think there's hardly likely to be any benefit. There will be curtailment of civil liberties. That is definitely there. Yes, there will be more business opportunities for industrialists from Taiwan to set a shop in mainland, which they have done. They have invested heavily actually in the mainland over a period of time. So, so-called benefits of reunification are not going to accrue to the average citizen of Taiwan who enjoy freedom, who enjoy cultural, religious freedom. Mind you, a lot of people in Taiwan follow Falun Gong. And in China, mainland China, Falun Gong is persecuted. Actually, they are held prisoners, organs are harvested. A lot of bad things are done to Falun Gong practitioners because Communist Party is afraid of any religious movement. And Falun Gong practitioners are there in Taiwan and they don't like the idea of being under communist rule. They are essentially democratic people. So, why would a democracy choose to come under the patronage of a communist dictatorship when they have totally different viewpoints about governance?
But so, do you think that China would be using this visit by KMT to influence and impress the people of Taiwan? And if so, then how? Or people of Taiwan would be looking at KMT as a traitor of to the country?
I think that was the reason. If we see that when President Lee Teng-hui in 1998 started the elections, democratic elections. He ruled from 1988 to 2000. In 2000 elections, DPP came to power, executive presidency for the first time, and Chen Shui-bian became the president, two terms successive of 8 years. After those 8 years, KMT came back to power. So there was 8 years of KMT, 8 years of DPP.
Hmm.
But in 2024 elections, previous president was from DPP. Uh,
Hmm.
her name was actually Tsai Ing-wen. Everybody thought that KMT will come back, will grab the executive presidency. But Ma Ying-jeou in 2023 went to mainland and harped about the cross-strait relations and peaceful relations and 1992 consensus that in a way harmed KMT's chances of winning back the presidency, although they were able to win the parliamentary majority, but they lost the presidency. And what KMT is hoping and what Xi Jinping is hoping that by putting some pressure, creating some fear psychosis in Taiwanese people, they might vote for KMT this time. Then the parliament and both the presidency will go to KMT and they will find it easier to sell the so-called reunification dream more to a KMT administration in Taiwan rather than to a DPP administration in Taiwan. They called DPP quote unquote splittist or secessionist and troublemakers. So a lot of choice words are used. So that's the situation. And Xi Jinping has said that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And everyone was calculating that probably Xi Jinping will occupy Taiwan in 2027. But China learns from the mistakes of Russian Federation and now with American mistakes with Iran. So they will continue to put pressure, economic pressure, military pressure. It's doubtful whether they will, quote unquote, send the forces because it becomes very difficult. The Taiwan Strait is 140 miles, and very recently, United States has agreed to sell $40 billion of armament to Taiwan. KMT
That's
is
what I was coming to, sir. I was coming to that. What is US going to do? The US is not going to sit quietly because they have, they had also placed their warship in the strait many years, like couple of years back only in favor of Taiwan. So how is US going to respond to this? China's increasing interest in unification of Taiwan and China. And also, I want to ask you, sir, so according to you, whatever you've said about China's attitude, that this theory of one state and two systems is it's not going to work, as they
It's
are
not going to
claiming
work.
that it will work.
Yeah, it's not going to work. So United States had what we call strategic ambiguity about the cross-strait relationships. And they said, yes, we we basically honor the 1992 consensus, whatever it is, but we also do not agree to use of force in cross-strait relationships, and we will continue to help with Taiwan's defense. There's a Taiwan Defense Act of United States Congress under which they keep on selling weapons. In during Biden's 4 years, Biden was a little bit unhinged and said that in case China invades Taiwan, US will intervene militarily. So that ambiguity
But
was,
but
I'm
so
just,
now I don't think it's as of now I don't think that US would be in any such position to intervene anywhere, or
well,
you think that they still will?
I'm just giving you the context. So this is that the strategic ambiguity was sort of done away during Biden administration. Now this administration, A, is not going to commit to anything Biden said because of ideological differences. B, this administration is totally clueless how to deal with various things and is getting into deeper trouble. It has overextended itself, and my guess is that United States, economically weakened, militarily overstretched under the Trump regime, will go for a G3 solution. And what G3 solution is that we will do whatever we want to do in Western Hemisphere and maybe in Europe or Middle East. Russia can do whatever they want to do in Eastern Europe. They can take Ukraine for whatever they want. And of course, Trump is going to communist China in month of May. And there will be some, you know,
Hmm.
appeasement of China because United States cannot tackle China militarily at this point in time.
Yes, sir.
So it may be a wink, wink, nod, nod kind of situation that if Xi Jinping were to do something to Taiwan, US will keep quiet as long as China does not meddle its nose into Iran affair or Ukraine affair or something like that. So we are going towards totally fluid geopolitical situation. The past equations are not going to hold true. US has other fear. If China takes over Taiwan, Taiwan produces 90% of the advanced chips through their company called TSMC.
Yes, sir.
And that will come under control of communist China. So just like rare
True.
earth, they were able to choke the supplies to US, they can choke the supply of advanced chips or semiconductors to US again. So there has been pressure put on Taiwan to invest in chip making industry on mainland US, several $100 billion. Taiwan sells $165 billion worth of advanced chips annually to all over the world. They are the leaders in that. So that
Yes, sir.
is the fear that will prevent even the current Trump regime from, letting China do what it wants. But militarily, United States has become much more weakened with its current involvements in the Persian Gulf.
Sir, so much pressure from everywhere. What can we expect from Taiwan? Like, what kind of reaction or response is expected? Will it or could it lead to some kind of unrest in the common people? Like in many different parts of the world, we have seen that when there is so much of conflict of interests, it has often led to the rise of insurgency or local rebels in the area where so much confusion and power struggle is happening to grab whatever. So what kind of response do we expect from Taiwan as far as the ruling party is concerned and the people who are in support of that?
So it is anybody's guess. I don't expect much military resistance if the government were to fall. Chinese people of any variety are very business minded people. And I don't think that there'll be any kind of insurgency if China were to send all its forces. It's totally asymmetric
So
at
they'll
this
not put
point.
up a fight.
They may use their, fighter jets and missiles and things like that. Issue is that how long China can control the island across 140 miles of the strait. And there are not only China versus Taiwan, there are other actors also. Besides US, there's Japan. And although Japan is no longer a military power, but the current prime minister had made some statements that if China were to move into Taiwan, that would be a security concern for Japan. And after that, there was a very strong reaction from China. The Chinese ambassador to Japan said that the person who said whose neck would be cut off. I mean, that was the statement made about the Japanese prime minister. So we cannot have that, this is the plan and everything will work according to this plan, Chinese plan. Whenever there is any kind of invasion, there are unpredictable scenarios.
True,
You
sir.
can you can see what happened in Iran.
Hmm.
US was hoping that between 3 or 4 days the government will fall. It didn't fall.
They will surrender.
Nationalistic instincts are very strong, but overall, I personally don't think that Taiwanese people will put up a long fight in form of insurgency because these are middle class people, these are highly educated people, these are not quote unquote warrior people. So whatever the government forces will do is a different issue, but you are not going to see guerrilla warfare like that is happening in Philippines or some other Asian nations.
And so, finally, I would like to ask you because any war happening in any part of the world affects everybody because there are always unintended consequences. So, as far as US, Iran, and Israel are concerned, of course, we are seeing the the after effect or the ongoing effect of it on India. How, suppose if such an unrest happens in the Strait of Taiwan and China tries to get a little overbearing and US is already engaged over here, but also tries to get involved over there because of business aspects and the chip war. How would or how could it affect India?
Well, India is not a direct party to the conflict. That is number one.
As far as Japan is concerned?
Uh, Japan would be a direct party. Japan governed that island from 1895 to the end of World War II. So Japan has certain security interests because communist China taking over Taiwan would be making it Japan the next target. So Japan's reaction, that is something to be considered. Japan's defense forces are currently self-defense forces under Article 9, but they are, trying to build up their armed forces and increasing budgetary overlay for defense. As far as India is concerned, except for, you know, supply of semiconductors, there may not be any major kind of influence, although Taiwan has, invested in India quite a lot more recently. You have Foxconn factory in Bengaluru. You have some, making factories in India. India probably will not get militarily involved, although United States
Hmm.
wants that to happen. Indian government, with whatever color, whatever hue, are going to be very cautious. They would not let anybody fire on the shoulder of Indian nation. India has land border with China. That is a problem, intractable problem. And when it comes to so-called Indo-Pacific strategy of United States, there has not been any help to India in resolving the land conflict with China, land border conflict with China on Tibet issue. So why would India unnecessarily become a unwitting useful idiot for Western imperialist ambitions. So India has no skin in the game. In fact, it may invite more trouble on the northern border if India were to flex muscles in the Strait of Taiwan. And again, you have to see at the government of Taiwan, it has not renounced occupation of Tibet. They consider themselves as the true legitimate government of China, Republic of China. So they don't say that, Tibet is separate nation. They have not made any statement about, having Arunachal Pradesh or Tawang as part of India. So you need to understand that they are not making, despite they wanting some sympathy from India. So you don't want to fall into that trap that you support an
Oh, yeah,
actor
absolutely.
which is going to hurt your interest later on.
That's true, sir.
Yes, there will be some economic fallouts because of, advanced chip manufacturing capability in Taiwan, but India should prepare for that, under Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think they are taking steps to manufacture advanced chips in India, but there's no need for India to get involved in US calculations and become a useful idiot for US and get into conflict with China because we have a land border. It will complicate resolution of that thing in a peaceful manner. And there's no reason for India to get involved in any war because that will impede the development of the nation. Any war is drains away the economic resources. So
True,
you
sir.
want to become a developed nation without getting entangled into other people's wars.
Absolutely, sir. So India has always been very careful. We have seen it in Iran, US, Israel scenario also that India has tried to be diplomatically as clean as possible. And if anything happens in the Taiwan Strait, I think US is the one which is going to be mostly under pressure that how to deal with that.
I think it'll fall upon US, Japan, and possibly South Korea how they handle that situation. India has no skin in the game. And India should not because, our interests are different from US interests.
True, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing these insights over what is happening in the Taiwan Strait, how China is continuously moving towards taking or wanting to take over Taiwan despite its resistance, how US could play an important role if something like that happens, and how it will affect Japan and India remains safe from it. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on the geopolitical aspects involving Taiwan, China, US, and Japan with us. And I hope that very soon we will also be discussing, I think we will be discussing a topic which will be India centric. And I hope that we can have a very insightful discussion as always. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me today on NatSec Analysis.
Thank you very much indeed, Captain Nikita Sahay, for inviting me on your platform, NetSec Analysis. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir.
Okay.